Very good.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Poetry Really Matters, our fourth episode. I am David Ellis, and this is my partner in crime, Cendrine.
Hello everyone, Cendrine here.
And tonight, excellent. I was wondering whether the microphone was working or not. Yes, we're here today to discuss our fourth episode of Poetry Really Matters. The other three episodes we've uploaded to YouTube, so they're all available on our YouTube channel for Auroras and Blossoms Poetry Journal. Tonight we're going to follow our usual format of the show, where we will read poetry. I'm going to read one of my poems. Cendrine is going to read one of hers. And then we're going to discuss a series that we've been working on recently of journals and workbooks, where we've actually created loads of different tips, tricks, and other kind of advice for poets and writers and authors, where they can look to get kind of like inspiration to be able to create poetry or use writing techniques. But also we offer social media tips and a lot of other ways to market and promote yourself better online as an author or a writer. So we're not restricted just to poetry. We're trying to cast our net as far as wide as we can for authors and writers to be inspired and to be creative, and to be creative the way they market themselves as well. So without further ado, I'm going to start with my particular poem that I wrote recently. So I'm going to read this first. Basically, I work on a style called found poetry, where I take some text from somewhere. It could be a poem, it could be a short story or a novel or any kind of sort of piece of literature. And I take a passage from that piece of literature or source material, and I write a poem based on it. And Colin Chesebro had a Tanka challenge recently that I went in for. You don't have to write tankas, you can write all kinds of other different poetry styles. So I decided to write a butterfly cinquain that was based around a poem called Love and Harmony. So I'm going to read Love and Harmony first, and then I'm going to read my poem as well, so you can see what the difference is when I apply my found poetry technique. So Love and Harmony was a poem written by William Blake, and it's love and harmony combine, and round our souls entwine, while thy branches mix with mine, and our roots together join. Joys upon our branches sit, chirping loud and singing sweet, like gentle streams beneath our feet, innocence and virtue meet. Thou the golden fruit dost bear, I am clad in flowers fair, thy sweet boughs perfume the air, and the turtle buildeth there. There she sits and feeds her young, sweet I hear and mournful song, and thy lovely leaves among, there is love, I hear his tongue. There his charming nest doth lay, there he sleeps the night away. There he sports along the day, and doth among our branches play. So that was William Blake's version of his poem Love and Harmony, and I used that as part of Colin Chesebro's Tanka challenge. So the poem that I actually wrote, that I shared on my blog, as I said, was a found butterfly cinquain, and I called it The Virtue Beneath Our Feet. Our souls mix with our roots, singing sweet innocence, the golden fruit in flowers sweet, perfume. The air she sits and feeds her song, lovely leaves lay away, the day among branches. So that was a found poem that I came up based upon William Blake's poem. And I really enjoy applying found poetry principles to a lot of different poetry techniques. I've actually done this to a Tanka poem. I've done it with haikus. You can pretty much apply it to all the poetry styles. So I just wanted to read that today to show you can get inspiration from almost anywhere. And that's what I did. I picked that particular poem and I used that poem. So now Cendrine is going to read her poem that she's got prepared for us today.
Okay, I had a connection issue, so I was out for a while. It took me a while to come back, so I see my the quality of on my end. I see myself, it's not very good, but anyway, hopefully you will be able to hear me. So taken from my latest poetry book, and the poem is called Think Upon Those Things. It's a poem that I wrote a long time ago, and actually recorded on a long time ago in another life. So the people who know me know this poem. So I'll go and read it. Think upon those things. Hush, baby, hush. The lull of the world will come. Nascent dreams and fantasies open the door to freedom. Hush, baby, hush. Let the tears flow evenly in the apex of your mind and feel the light through your spine. Upon those things that make us human. Think upon those words against one another. Think about those instants when change soars into the sky, when you feel limitless, impervious to sorrow. So next time you curse the world, remember that you are part of it. Remember your significance in the eyes of the beholder. Then and only then will you be able to think of beauty. But right now, hush and think upon those things. That's it.
It's a lovely poem. And was that from a particular book?
Can you hear
you
me?
read that from Cendrine? Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me speaking? We got connection issues still. Can you hear me, Cendrine?
Yeah, that's my latest book. Oops. Let's see, the hardest space. Yeah, there you
And
go.
you recently did a blog tour with that book, didn't you? I was
That's
involved
the
in that blog
hardest
tour as well, actually.
space. Yes, I can.
I
Okay.
think we're having technical issues at the moment.
I can hear you.
You're very slow on your side. I think you might be coming back again. I think you keep cutting in and out at the moment.
And the actually it ends today. I mean, it ends a few days. Really? Yeah. I really well.
It's not coming through very well at all. You keep freezing, and the audio keeps going out. Oh, you're gone. Well, folks, we're just going to see if Cendrine can come back in again. I think she got kicked out of the broadcast, so we'll just give it a couple of minutes and see whether she can connect back in again. Hello again, Cendrine.
So should be back.
Can you hear me on your end?
Yeah. Very not working. No, connection working at all. Can reconnect. So try some.
Doing some technical issues, folks.
Okay. I'm back now.
Hello again.
Can you see me now?
Yes, and you're moving this time. You were frozen before.
Oh, here you go. That was a problem with my browser, actually. The browser I was using was slowing down everything. Now I get it. Okay. So finally it's working. Finally. Sorry, guys. Technology. When it works, but when it doesn't work, my goodness. In any case. So I'm not sure. Did you hear the poem I read or no?
I think we just about heard the poem, but you were just about to tell us where you read the poem from, and that you're also doing a blog tour with your book at the moment as
Yeah,
well. I think
so
where it came from.
so it came from this book, The Heart
Yeah,
of
we can
Space.
see that now. We couldn't see the cover before when it was
Yeah, so
blurred.
here you go, The Heart of Space, which I released in January. So yeah, the book tour is almost over. It ends in 3 days, so it's almost over. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. In any case, let's go back to the topic at hand, which was David, our series of guides
That's
for
right. Our
authors
series
and
of guides
writers.
and our guides and workbooks and journals. So we've been working for the last 2 or 3 months, I'd say, producing a lot of different guides. Are we up to like 6 now, I believe? We have some that cover poetry. We've got some that cover the marketing of yourself as a poet, but you could equally use it as a marketing guide for yourself as a writer or an author. And we also have positivity tips. We have an affirmations book. We have all kinds of different books and journals that we want to try and give people creativity and inspiration for. And what we wanted to do was actually share one of our tips from one of the books that we've written. We thought we would start doing this as a regular feature. Every episode, we would just share one tip from one book. So I believe today we're going to be sharing a tip from our 20 great tips on how to write really, really good poetry. So
Yes.
Cendrine is going to give us a quick rendition of one of the tips that we put into that particular book.
Oh, a rendition. Ooh la la. So yeah, the tip comes from the workbook called My Poetry Workbook, 20 Tips to Write Great Poems. Because we realized that a lot of people would love to try poetry, but the problem is that it comes that fear of writing poetry or reading poetry comes from high school and university when you have to study poetry in a way that is quite scary, and people think that poetry has to rhyme, has to have the deep meaning, that the poet is in trouble or something is wrong, so you have to kind of read the poet's mind. So our goal really with this workbook is to help nip this fear in the bud so that you can actually write poetry if you want to. It's not very, poetry is not hard to write as long as you realize that you don't have to pressure yourself to be into any deep meaning or mystic meaning or anything. So one of the great tips that we have in this workbook is about poetry forms. So did you know there are at least 50 different poetry forms, and each form offers challenges of its own? But if you try, if you have tried all of them, like we have, David and I have, sometimes you're like, none really appeals to me. So you create your own, and creating your own is a fun way to actually learn to enjoy poetry in a very, very different way. So I did that with my own poetry style that I call the Sisku. So in English, it's spelled six-coup, but I pronounce Sisku because I'm French, and why not, right? So the Sisku is a 6-word poem that is based on the haiku, my favorite poetry form. And the Sisku must be inspired by a particular photograph. So it works like this. A reference to nature is encouraged, but you write your poem in 3 lines, sorry, 6 words in 3 lines. The first 2 lines must describe different ideas in 1 or 2 words and 2 or 3 words respectively. So line 1 is one idea, 1 or 2 words. Line 2 is a second idea, 2 or 3 words. And the third line should contain a twist or surprise. And you use the remaining amount of words, and that adds up to 6 words in total. So the question we ask you to ask yourself, the question is for example, what would make your poetry form unique? What necessary elements should it have that others lack? So in the workbook, we ask you to write a few poems when you are done to help cement your own rules for your new poetic form. So when you write your own poetry form, just don't think about you having fun. Think about other people trying to have fun as well, writing your own poetry form.
Yep. So that's one of many tips that we have in that book, in a nutshell. And both Cendrine and I worked really hard to try and come up with as many different variations of tips as we possibly could. And that's just one aspect of the journals or workbooks that we've been working on. As I say, that's one of 6 that we have. A lot of them of the journals and workbooks that we have are based around a certain number of tips and tricks. So you can get into the journal or workbook and know exactly where you stand when it comes to using your creativity to work through all the exercises and try to use them in order to increase your own writing capabilities. And that's why I mentioned the writing challenge that I did, which I've been doing now. I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks. The Colin Chisbro challenge. I keep mentioning her because it's great for me to try out different forms that I haven't had much experience with. I might have tried them in the past, but we all get a little rusty, and unless you do things regularly, you can then develop your skill. And I talked to her about it, and she said it's kind of like solving puzzles. So what we find is that all the creativity exercises that we're trying to provide is to help people to solve their internal kind of writer's block puzzle or poetry puzzle that they've got, where they might think to themselves, how do I create something? Where is the inspiration? Where is the focus? Because a lot of the time you might go to any poetry journal. Our poetry journal is focused on positivity and inspirational poetry, but a lot of writing journals say write anything you want, and you're very kind of sort of stuck when you just think, well, what form do I choose? What theme do I choose? There's a lot of different choice out there, and you want to be able to focus yourself, and that's what our guides are primarily there for, is to help kind of guide you and give you that focus so that you can actually get past the point where you won't know what to create. You'll think, actually, I've got some ideas on what I could create. And that's why writing challenges are good. National Poetry Writing Month is coming up in April. So when we do our next show, we'll be priming you for another series of another interesting thing that we're going to be doing in relation to National Poetry Writing Month. So let's look out for that in the next episode. That'll be Poetry Really Matters episode 5. Which will probably be in the first couple of weeks of March. But as I say, always look for challenges because you can then publish to people. You can get feedback from other poets. They might read your poem and they'll give you feedback. And with that feedback, you might be able to then improve the poem and then submit that to journals yourself because you've actually had interaction with the writing and poetry community. And if they like it, then chances are someone's going to like it at the other end of a poetry journal or magazine.
Yeah, and really challenging oneself is very, very important, because after a while you get stuck. So if you get tired with a poetry form, you try something else. But it's very important to challenge yourself. And one thing I've noticed is by creating my own poetry form, it has helped me be more creative. So I find different ways of saying some things that I wouldn't have been able to say before. So it's a really good way to move forward with what you're trying to do. And challenging yourself is one of the most important thing in writing. And actually, I know a lot of people who were prose writers who decided to write poetry, and they realized, oh my God, actually writing poetry has made me a better writer overall. So yeah, challenge yourself. Don't be scared to try new things. And NaNoWriMo and NaPoWriMo are definitely great events for you to challenge yourself, because you have to write something new every day. And even if you don't want to show it to the world, you don't have to. But at least, challenge yourself in that way, so that after the 30 days, you realize, oh my God, I was able to write all that. Is it me? It helps you build your self-confidence, which is extremely important when you're a writer, and not just a poet, a writer and an author in general. You need to have that kind of self-confidence, not vanity or over self-confidence. No. We're talking about the kind of self-confidence that makes you continue to challenge yourself. You continue to challenge yourself, and you're more and more confident to show your work with the world. And you're not scared of criticisms or feedback from others.
Exactly, Cendrine. And I feel also that there is a pressure. You might think to yourself, and I feel the pressure when I do National Poetry Writing Month, or any kind of sort of challenge that involves a lot of writing particular pieces. I feel the need that I have to publish something on my blog. But I have noticed other people, for example, will just publish the process of what they're doing, or they might just even publish an excerpt. So if you've written a poem with several stanzas or several lines, just share a part of it, and then keep back the rest for yourself if you're worried about sharing the whole thing with people. But don't be afraid to share the whole thing if you're worried about people judging your work, because that is the whole point, really, is that you want people to appreciate your work. You want to put it out there to see what kind of critical feedback you get back from it. And if someone's critical about it, well, you need to see whether they have a valid point, because if they aren't justifying their argument, if they just say they don't like something and they haven't bothered to back it up, then you can pretty much ignore that sort of comment. But if someone came along and said, I don't like the way you did this poem because you've used too many syllables, because that's not how a particular poem works, or you've written it about this theme when the poem should be about that theme because of the form, it may be that you just say, well, I'm using artistic license, and I want my particular thing to be like that. But at least if I'm having a dialogue with someone, you can then justify in your own mind how you've created something. And then if you can do that and you can kind of justify it yourself, then you can give yourself the confidence to say, no, I'm happy with what's been done. But it might be that someone will give you some critical feedback that you just think, actually, I didn't think about that, and it's good to have another pair of eyes on that. And they've noticed that. They might have noticed a particular piece of grammar or a spelling or something that you wouldn't have considered, and by doing that, you've actually improved the piece, and then that might make the piece acceptable for a journal. You know, if you were to send the piece in that form as it is before you had that critical feedback, then there's every chance you could have been rejected. But by having other kind of external influences, people that you aren't, because if you just send it to friends or family specifically, then they might be just turn around, and either they were not going to be interested in poetry or writing in general, or they're just going to say, very well done, clap, clap, clap. And,
exactly.
You know, what you're looking for is you're looking for either an acquaintance or even a stranger to come along, and if they compliment you, then you've obviously impressed them enough, because they aren't someone that's kind of beholden to you. They aren't someone that is influenced by you. So to get a random stranger pop up on your blog and say, great, fantastic. You know, a lot of people are shy. I think we had this discussion before with me, Cendrine, that people are shy to leave comments on blogs and things. But and it doesn't mean that they aren't reading it or appreciating it. So even when someone gives you just a one-word comment like great, fantastic, and especially what's very flattering is that I've had some things recently where some authors have reblogged my post and said it's great, and I haven't known these people. They've just been on my kind of my list of people to send stuff out to. That maybe they follow my blog or they're on my email list, and we haven't had the interaction, and all of a sudden out of the blue they're reblogging my work, they're sharing my work, and I didn't ask them to, and that's very, very kind of them to do that. And I feel it's got great validation as well. You know, if you've written something and it's been someone has sent it out unprompted, they've just gone and just done it, then I think you can kind of sit back and just think, yes, I've written a very good piece there, and I should seriously think about finding a way to publish that, be it submitting it to a journal or putting it away into a collection of other poems. And then when you've got enough of those, then think about publishing or self-publishing those. Or even approaching a traditional publishing. You know, you don't have to go down the self-publishing route. We just go down the self-publishing route because it's faster, and we're professionals and we know exactly what we're doing, and we want to get the work out there to the people. You know, we're experienced people. We've written a lot of poetry in our lives, and both of us have got a lot of books on the cards now. I think Cendrine's broken the 20 book barrier, and I've got over 10 myself. So we are very well on my way to getting near 20, and but I'll never catch up with Cendrine, I think.
Yes, you will. You will eventually. I'll get tired. No, you're very absolutely agree with you, and that speaks to one of the big issues that I've seen in the poetry community is poets tend to compare themselves to others way too much, and they take feedback personally. And I keep telling them, no. What you want to take personally, I mean, not personally, but when you take it to account, is constructive feedback. And what you said is very true. Family and friends, they're not the right audience to show your poem to, unless these people love poetry in general. But what they're going to do is going to say, oh, great, or they're not going to say anything. They're going to support you because they are members of your family or they are your friends and they love you. But in terms of constructive feedback, if you really want to know what your audience, a potential audience, likes, it's better to focus on the constructive feedback that strangers, your potential readers, will give you. So, constructive feedback doesn't just mean, oh, fantastic, I love it. It is fantastic. I love it because it's not very good. I don't like it because this is how I would have written it. It doesn't mean that you have to take it into consideration and change your poetry because of that. It just means that here is something to pay attention to that may help you improve your writing and your craft in general. So never take something personally, whether it's negative or positive, because there's always a grain of truth in what people tell you, especially in constructive feedback. The people who say, oh no, it's crap, without telling you anything, who cares? But those who take the time to actually explain why they like it or why they don't like it and what they would do if they were in your shoes, these are this is your potential audience right here. So pay attention to them, take the time to connect with them and thank them, ask them questions, and they will be really, really happy in most cases to answer your questions and help you, because what is really important for your readers, especially when they get to know you, is that they want to be on the journey with you, your poetic journey. They want to relate to you. So the more relatable you are in your writing to your audience, the better it is. It doesn't mean that you have to change your style. It means that if you eventually want to release books and to be read by people around you, you have to make your content relatable. It doesn't mean that your voice has to be different, but you have to take into account your readers. And readers of poetry are very specific people. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you couldn't have put it better. I mean, that's the way we improve ourselves, is that it's by putting ourselves out there. At some point you've got to try to, whether it's even if you want to join a local writers circle,
Mm-hmm.
and try and share it with like-minded individuals. Because when we talk about the friends and family thing, I mean, you can share with them if any of them are writers. I should have mentioned that previously, because if they've got some experience with writing, then that's the kind of exception to the rule. But ultimately they are going to, either they're going to support you or they're just going to brush it off and just say, well, it's not something that they're involved in, and then you're on your own. But just to listen to feedback, you don't have to change your whole style or way of thinking. It really is a kind of sort of growth process, and you try and take from what people say, from their opinions, because it's their opinions. Ultimately, you take from their opinions. You say, is there something that I can use? And also the great thing about constructive feedback is that it might give you more kind of ideas for creation for the future. You might be talking to someone and thinking, oh well, I'm not going to alter the poem in this particular way, but I might do the form again. But you know what, I'll actually take on board what they said, and so I might base the theme based on what they said this time round, or I might take some sort of aspect. The conversation could be very, very useful in terms of your creativity and how you approach the whole situation the next time round.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So as I mentioned earlier in the episode, National Poetry Writing Month is almost upon us. It's not going to be long at all. It starts on the 1st of April and it goes all the way through to the end of April. The reason I bring it up now is because the only other chance we're going to be bringing up a National Poetry Writing Month will be in a couple of weeks' time, when we'll be incredibly close to April in the first place. I don't think the official website is allowing people to register just yet, but I think they usually start doing it about a month before the actual event. So I would keep an eye on the website. I believe it's www.napowrimo.net. So it's napowrimo.net. And it's a really, really good website to look at. You can register. You don't have to post your poems there every day, but if you do, you're going to generate an audience for yourself. I find the community very, very supportive. If you comment on other people's poems, I guarantee they will do the same for you. And what I tend to find is a lot of people register but don't post on the day and go off and do their own thing. And there's so many poems that are created every day. Last time I looked at it, because I've done NaPoWriMo for several years in a row, I found that there was something like a couple of hundred poems being produced a day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a vast amount of poems. It can be overwhelming for people. What I suggest is that either, even if you want to be a spectator, why not read some of the poems and comment on some of the poems? You don't have to participate to be involved with NaPoWriMo. Some people are going to be sitting there thinking, I haven't got time to read 200 poems per day and write my own poetry and do other kind of sort of things. What I suggest to those people is pick a few poems that you like to comment on, because if you don't give any kind of sort of feedback to anybody, chances are you're going to post your poems and you're not going to be given to the author community or writer community, and you won't get any feedback for your own poems. So I suggest keep it kind of relevant to the people that you like, the poems that you like. And if you've got time, maybe there'll be a day when you don't post a poem because you can't think of anything, but then use that time then on that day to say, okay, I'm going to read a few poems now and put some feedback there. And as I say, that there'll be a list of participants that the NaPoWriMo website will provide, so you can dive into people's pieces. If you start seeing some pieces that you like on the daily challenges, and the daily challenges will give you some kind of guidance. They give you a theme or a poetry style to follow. You don't have to follow those themes or poetry styles. If you look at them and you aren't inspired, sometimes that used to happen to me. I thought some of the themes were great, but they just weren't triggering my muse. So what I would do is I would then look in alternate places and come up with different ideas. But it's a great exercise. It can be quite exhausting because you are writing a poem every day for 30 days. But as I say, you don't have to participate every day to enter the challenge. And at the end of it, once you're finished, you could almost say that you've either got a quarter or half, depending on how big your poetry books are. You might have enough for a chapbook. If you want to make a full-length poetry collection, you've just got to write another 20 or 30 more, and you could write a full-length poetry collection. So that's what people have always said. If you enter this challenge, for those not familiar with chapbooks, most of them are 30 or 40 pages long, and therefore if you were to do most of the days or all of the days in NaPoWriMo, you've got enough for a chapbook. And you can publish that. You can publish that digitally. You could submit that sort of somewhere, and that is the goal. Writers Digest often they have they have April and they have a November writing month, I think, as well. They've got some old prompts on their website as well, and so that's another good resource to look at. So anywhere you can find writing prompts, anywhere that does challenges, it's well worth taking a look and giving you the focus, because as I say, there's just so much inspiration out there that sometimes it can just be, everything is just too broad. I've got to write a poem about inspiration. Oh, what am I going to look for? Is that you want some sort of theme, some sort of focus. And sometimes by using the NaPoWriMo themes, you might actually say, well, I don't want to do that, but I could do this. And also I've found is that sometimes you could be doing NaPoWriMo, and one day, sort of several days into NaPoWriMo, you might think, actually, I didn't use prompt number 5 on day 5, and it's now day 10. I could go back to day 5 and use that prompt. So I've often done that. Or you can find inspiration from reading other people's work. That's why you must read other people's work, because you might read their poetry and then just say, okay, that's interesting. They didn't use the prompt, or they did use the prompt. That's what they did. I could write something like that. That's why it's so important to give feedback to those people, because they have helped you and they're helping you in your journey as well as to become a better writer. So
and it's good to build a community as well, because poetry can be a very lonely activity. You have to like solitude to be a poet. So it's a good way to actually come together and build some kind of community around even your blog. Or it feels great to go to other poets' blogs and leave comments and read what they're up to and read their poems. It's a good way to be to keep a finger on what's going on in the poetry community around the world too. So, and you get to know more people, which is always a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we haven't got long before that. As we say, I mean, we're halfway through February now, so we've only got 6 weeks. And I say to people that are looking to do it, I say you should definitely register. You don't have to do every day. And I would start thinking to yourself what sort of poetry you might want to write throughout those days. And that's where our journals and workbooks could actually be very, very useful, because we have lots of ideas and inspiration in there. So as I said, when you get some days where you're not feeling the prompt is good enough or isn't relevant for you, then by all means, I would look elsewhere at other kind of sort of sources. And that's why we created our journals and workbooks, because we figured with NaPoWriMo coming up, you can never have enough inspiration lying around to give you a wide variety of choices. to be able to say, you know what, I'm actually going to pick this, use this particular one
Yeah.
this day. And if you buy the because we have them in paperback and ebook versions, so if you use the ebook version, you could get a pen and paper or just use a notepad on your computer and do it that particular way. But the paperback versions will allow you to get your pen out and fill those journals with inspiration. And to be perfectly honest, as I say, with 6 weeks to go, it might be a thing to start thinking about the type of poems that you're going to write, or some lyrics, and get those down so that when it actually comes to April, you're not so overwhelmed. Because I usually would write on the days themselves, and life always gets in the way, and there's always some other priority taking place. It's always your family and friends that are taking priority. But if you were to write some random thoughts and ideas into your journals or workbooks, or create some notes before the actual event, just like when you do National Novel Writing Month, you would write some plots and synopsis and all kinds of other kind of sort of things to help you kind of get through the month, because you have to write a lot there. It's 50,000 words. I don't know how many words it would total up in NaPoWriMo, but it depends how big your poems are, whether you write small ones like haikus and things, or whether you write longer ones. But as I say, use whatever facilities you've got, and try to start thinking about, if you're writing some poetry now, maybe you want to save it up for National Poetry Writing Month. I would try and pump it out to your blog, because the thing about National Poetry Writing Month is that it's very, very popular across the globe for that particular month. And then after the month of April, it kind of sort of dies off. So if you want your poems to be seen, it might be an idea to sort of save, bank some of them, and then get them ready for National Poetry Writing Month, and submit them then.
And if you need prompts, you're looking behind me, we have my creative journal here, which is part of our guides and workbooks. This one was created with prompts in mind. So you have about 20 prompts that will very unique prompts, actually. We try to reinvent the wheel a little bit in the prompts that we wrote in that book. So you might find this one useful in any case. So I think we're done for today, David, unless we had something else to add. Next month, we will make an announcement about NaPoWriMo, because our journal is going to take part in NaPoWriMo. We'll delve in more details about that next month, because it's a little too early, and you need to get ready to get in the right frame of mind. And what's better than to get ready in the right frame of mind than to check out the second issue of our magazine, which was released last month. Check this out. Check the fantastic poems that we have from fantastic poets. I'm not saying that just because they are very, very talented people. And the poetry is uplifting and positive. So that's what we love. That's what we love.
We're getting a very, very load of good submissions. We're very, very impressed with the talent that is being given to us. It's very hard for us to. We don't want to reject poetry. Sometimes we have to, simply because it just doesn't quite fit the nature of the magazine. And as much as we say, I think some people still try to say that it's inspirational to them, but we don't feel that it comes across that way. But we don't. We have some that we have to reject on that basis. But the ones that we approve, there's a vast diversity of how people are writing their poems, and that's great, because we don't want to be publishing a whole journal of similarly written sort of poems. But the people have been very, very expressive, very creative, and they're not too bad to format as well. We were worried about having lots of different sort of shape poetry or other kind of sort of formatted issues, but people know how to use their words very, very kind of cleverly and wittily. And in times, they'll take us on journeys, emotional journeys, and we've got so much great talent that it's really, really good. And we've got issue 3 that is just around the corner as well. So we'll talk more about that in our next in Poetry Really Matters episode number 5. So you've all got that to look forward to as well.
So many things. We've been working really hard. We enjoy. I know you enjoy the journey too. I've really been enjoying this journey. We've achieved some amazing things. We've been listed on some incredible websites for Poetry Journal. So thanks to you, you've been doing a great job behind the scenes. So it's a very exciting journey, especially in poetry, which is a particularly difficult genre to market and to promote. And so I'm very, very happy about the responses and the reactions and the feedback we've been getting. It's a very, very exciting journey to be part of, really.
It is, thank you, and I'm enjoying it immensely myself, and we're not going to stop. You know, we're going through what we call, I think, a publishing phase at the moment, but we really are on a mission to generate a huge amount of material when it comes to being providing inspiration and creativity. You know, we're not limiting ourselves to just the aspects of the journal in terms of you know, the inspiration that we get from the poetry there. We're trying to work hard to create things for writers and authors. And to give them really kind of sort of different kind of sort of facets that we said, you know, so just going over those journals and workbooks again, there's social media, there's marketing, there's inspirational affirmations and actions and things that you can use as a kind of like your own diary entries for the day, and how to make yourself feel better about yourself. And we feel that if you feel better about yourself, you're going to be more positive and more creative. And that's our goal. You know, we feel like we're not limited to any one particular direction with these journals. So I think you're going to find us releasing a lot more of them in the near future, and we'll keep covering the ones that we've released on every episode that we do of this show of Poetry Really Matters. So.
Yep, for sure. So we're done for today.
Yeah, we're done.
Thank you, David, as always, for being here with me. Thank you to everyone for listening, for watching. Sorry for the technical issues at the beginning of the show. We wish you a fantastic weekend, and we will see you in March. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for watching.